Let's bring in co-host of the Big Money Show, Brian Brenberg. By half at least in 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I mean, his energy level was back tonight. Number one, that was the thing. I found myself, I didn't come to laugh, but I found myself laughing because it was fun, it was energetic, and it was best when he was talking about his track record. I mean, that's the piece of what he's done that can be so compelling to people, because you've lived through 3.5 years and you lived under Trump and you saw your wages grow. You saw your energy bills go down. You felt the lightness of being able to afford things, and that still sticks with people today. So when he does that, man, he's unbeatable. But he's got to do that a lot in the coming months.
Well, it's called joy, right? He has a joyful message out there, to steal a Kamala Harris line.
Yeah, that word is very popular now.
But again, if you look at electric prices up by 50% and gas prices up by 50%, that makes people feel good. If you can lower prices, that's what's crushing their pocketbook, on top of the grocery store, on top of insurance, on top of car prices. And again, I think you're right. That's a message. If he sticks to it, that's going to make voters very attractive.
Yeah, and it's so simple. You can follow the logic. The thing Kamala never does is actually explain how she's going to get everything done. And of course, the answer is because it's all big government. But with Trump, well, how do you bring energy prices down? You unleash the production of energy. It's not hard. How do you bring prices down when it comes to your appliances or cars or whatever? Well, you don't foist regulations on people. I mean, you can follow the logic through, which is why it's so powerful, because it's self-evident. The Trump campaign, at its best, is self-evident. That's what he has to do. And I saw him do that tonight. He did it with energy, and that, I think, will reach people.
And humor. And Sean was picking up on some of the pieces of the CPI report that we got earlier. And at first glance, well, Harris and Biden will tell you it's a win. Inflation fell below 3% for the first time since March 2021. But the problem is folks aren't feeling the win. Essentially, essentials are astronomically higher than when Biden and Harris took office. Food up more than 20%. Shelter costs the same. Energy costs up more than 30%. Auto insurance gaining 55%.
Right.
And someone at the White House might want to tell Biden that.
Has the U.S. beat inflation, Mr. President?
Yes. I told you my policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
So this is your permanently new high level of prices.
Thank you.
Nothing is falling and prices are still going up, but that's your win. Let me tell you where you can stick your win. And jerk.
They won't go down. And the other thing, when you're talking like electricity, shelter, car insurance, there are no substitutes. It's not like you buy Chef Boyardee to bring your electricity bill down. There is no thing you can do there, which is why people feel that pain. They're stuck. They've got to insure their car. The prices are high. What they won't acknowledge is that they've built a heap of inflation pain. As you said, it's not getting smaller, and it's getting worse in areas that hit working people hardest. How you heat your home, how you pay for your car, how you pay for your rent. You can't get out of those things.
Because their salaries haven't kept up with inflation.
Because
and again, if you can get prices to stop increasing and you can grow salaries, people will feel a lot better. And what I found in politics, Brian, was when you can go out on the campaign trail and you can talk to people and listen to real Americans about their stories, you have a better grasp on where they're at. You're going to go to the Iowa State Fair this Friday, talking to real voters.
Yeah, I am. I love state fairs. I love everything about state fairs. I love tractors. I love food on a stick. And I love talking to people who are out there trying to make sense of what's going on with their prices or with this election. And how should I think about the issues? So we're going to do the show from there. I'm going to do the show from there on Friday. And we're going to talk about all those things with people who have some real choices to make in the months ahead.
I will describe it as the Harris and Biden have forced every American to carry around twin anvils. It's the anvil of higher prices, but then also the anvil of soaring credit card debt they've had to take on to make ends meet, which has skyrocketed because of higher interest rates. And so the prices were bad, but now they are crushed, literally crushed. It's $250 billion every year that the American people are paying just on credit card debt.
It's such a good point. Inflation is the reason you had to borrow the money, and the interest rates are the cost of having to do so. And both crush you, and both are real, and both are issues that Kamala Harris does not know how to touch.
Well, let's turn to this because we want to give a big old happy birthday to Miss Social Security, the old broad. She's turning 89 today.
Yeah, she is you want to talk about childless. I'm just kidding.
Cat lady. And she has a one-way ticket to insolvency unless Washington takes action.
Estimates are that could happen by 2033. And to add a cherry on top of that crap cake, we just learned that the agency has issued more than $1 billion in improper payments. This was never meant to be what it is.
No.
It was meant to be just for a very small sliver of the country, Brian. And it's ballooned into taking care of everybody.
Look, you got to keep your promises to the people who count on it. That's job number one. And Trump mentioned that in his speech tonight. But then number two, you got to talk about my kids. What are we going to do when they're going to retire? And the way the system is set up now, I mean, it's not even going to be 83% of the benefits by the time they retire. We've got to make changes. But the problem is you've got a political class in Washington that cannot have an adult conversation. All they want to do is demonize each other on this issue, which is why at the end of the day, for me, I throw my hands up and say, God, can somebody have the guts and the smarts to tell us how to put more of this in private hands? Because I don't want the government managing my retirement.
You know, back when I ran for Congress 2010, 2011, 2012, we actually talked about this issue. We came up with real solutions to fix this problem. It's become a third rail and a political liability when you do talk about it. And so I think we have to be honest. Yeah. What's going to happen is you're either going to tax people to fund the hole in Social Security, or you're just going to print money. Print more money, drive more inflation, and fill that gap. But again, everyone gets poorer because we're not willing to look at real solutions. Again, keep the promise for those in their retirement or about to retire, but you got to make changes for your kids, even for Dagan, Duffy, and Brenberg.
Why are we going to lie to people about where this thing is going? Doing nothing doesn't provide benefits for the next generation. You're just, how much more are we going to have to cut for them? Quit lying and also quit trusting the government for this stuff. That's what I would say. Kamala wants to grow the government for your housing and your medical care. That's not going to work. It's going to be the same thing we got with Social Security. Learn from the past so you can be better in the present.
No doubt.
22% of all federal spending, and people are taking $3 for every dollar they put in.
Right.
I mean, it's unsustainable, and those politicians lie to people.
I didn't lie. I told you the truth.